So first I'm going to welcome everybody back to our channel. With us today we have Laura Cavell, and very excited to have very accomplished author Ina Yalof with us.
Thank you.
So Ina, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I first wanted to start by saying how we met.
Sure.
And I had been asked to be on television before, and I'd been interviewed for some articles before, but nobody ever asked me to be in their book before.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that was a huge honor for me, number one. And not knowing much about you and now learning more, it's an even bigger honor that you asked me to do that. So maybe you could tell the story of how you found me in the store and how it relates a little bit to your new book.
Okay. Well, my book is in the works. It's in process now. So I've been looking for people to interview. My history with oral history is looking for subjects that I think would be interesting to people who just want to know about behind the scenes things. So I did a book called Life and Death, The Story of a Hospital, which is about Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. And for that book, I interviewed not only the chiefs of surgery and the nurses, but the gardener and the baker and the laundry worker. And I realized when I was doing PR that those were the interviews that people were interested in. Everyone knows what doctors do, but nobody really understands what it's like to do the laundry and do the sheets for a hospital. So now I came to, what am I going to do next? I'm a fairly new New Yorker. My husband passed away 7 years ago, and I moved to the city because my kids are here.
Sorry to hear that.
And thank you.
Yes.
And I was looking around for a niche about New York.
I wanted to say one thing, that after we met and we sat down and you interviewed me, I don't know if you remember, but as you were leaving, I said something not too intelligent. I said, when is your book going to be out? Like in 2 to 3 weeks, I can go to Barnes & Noble and buy it? And you very politely giggled and you said, well, it actually takes me like 2 to 3 years
Exactly.
to find my subjects, interview them, research them. And that was, then I started thinking and I said, it was such a nice interview when we sat down together. I felt like you knew me for years.
Well, because I research. I knew nothing about watches. My husband was a watch lover. He was a high-powered executive in a retail company.
Right. That carried a lot of watches.
Right. He never wore any jewelry other than a watch. He just, and he always knew. He was a New Yorker. I met him when I was 14 and I was in Miami Beach. He came down to live for 2 years. I met him in high school and I said, that's the guy for me.
Right.
So.
Nice. You ended up going to college together also?
We went to the University of Florida together. Yes.
Okay.
And then he graduated and he moved to New York. Okay. And I was back with my family in Miami Beach.
And you were together at this point?
We were always boyfriend, girlfriend.
Gotcha.
But now I'm 20 years old, or 19, and I said, all my friends are getting married. I want to get married too.
Right.
And he said, I'm 21, I don't have any money, I can't possibly marry you. I can't buy you a ring. I said, I'll bring my mother's, I'll have a note from my father, whatever. So he said, okay.
Right.
So I knew even then that he loved watches.
Right.
And so I decided that I'm going to get him a watch for our wedding. He always said he wanted the thinnest watch possible. This is quite a long time ago.
Right.
So I found a Longines, which I had.
Is this one here?
It's this one, yes. After 50 years, it certainly did not look like this.
When you brought it here.
Right. And
well, let me ask you a question. You didn't know you were bringing watches for us to fix when we first met.
I did not.
Until you came in here, I think, and saw what was going on here.
Yes.
I don't think it resonated, right?
Well, exactly. I knew nothing about watches. When I came in to interview you for my book, we're sitting in this office, and in the background, I saw all these men in the white coats. And you told me that when you walk in, something takes the dirt off your shoes.
That is correct. I hope it's not showing. It's looking a little dirty.
And I was so impressed. And I knew that I was sitting since he did pass away like 7 years ago,
Right.
I knew I was sitting with two of his favorite watches. The third one we gave to my son,
Okay.
which was it was an Audemars Piguet.
Which hopefully he'll watch this video and see what's going on here, and he'll bring it in for service. Because I want to make sure someone else doesn't mess it up. So.
After I saw what goes on here, seriously,
Right.
I would never bring a watch anywhere else. And I have
very
to
nice.
say, when I met you, I had never heard of Central Watch. I mean, why would I?
Right.
Right?
Sure.
But afterwards, we went for dinner with several people, and everybody knew Central Watch. And I think I mentioned the name of the man we were dining with.
Yes.
He said, I just picked up my watch from here.
Uh-huh.
I said, how does anyone even know about it? He said, everybody knows about it. But I wouldn't.
It's a New
because
York thing.
It's a New York thing.
It's a New York thing, and it's a watch thing. I think
It's a watch
now,
thing.
if you're the industry has kind of grown all across the country, all across the world, that there are special watches now, as you've seen by going to that auction
Paul
for Paul
Newman
Newman's
auction.
watch. And when you have something that valuable, you can't just bring it anywhere. You know, you have to be in the right place. So I think that's why a lot of people now, are starting to learn about us, that and our fantastic YouTube channel. So-
And they should, and I'm sure you're doing this, but they should see what I'm
Yes.
seeing while I'm sitting here. And this is where I interviewed you, and
Right.
I was sitting where I could watch this. It's so impressive. I mean, these are older men who are, most of them,
Yes. No, there's a few babies in there.
There's a few young'uns.
Yes.
and
It's a good
they're
mix.
so focused and so concentrated, and it's so immaculate.
Yes.
And then when I asked you, I said I have two watches that were my husband's, and they're sitting in a drawer, and I really want to fix them, but I never knew where to take them. And this one in particular, I wore after he died, and I hit it on a wall once, and I broke the crystal, and the fingers and the hands came off,
Yes.
and I just said, I'm going to keep what's left of it, because, as I mentioned, when I gave it to him, I wrote on the back, which says, I will be loving you always,
That's
with
beautiful.
my name and the date.
Mhm.
And I did.
Yes, I know. No, I could tell by when you and I spoke how you spoke about him,
Yeah.
how important the watch is, and and I could see that passion. It's something that I was lucky enough to find with this
Sure,
woman
yeah.
sitting next to me, and I would be lucky enough to be able to spend that many years as you did with him. So.
But it looks exactly like the original,
Uh-huh.
and I'm so happy to have it. And now that we've shown it,
Yes.
I'm going to wear it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to help
All
you
right.
on with it.
Yes.
I mean, we did the before and after pictures also. I think we put that up on our site.
Oh, good.
And also,
Yeah, it was a mess.
I'm going to include it in this video as we're
Okay.
doing it, just to see, how it came in here. It had a lot of
Beautiful,
miles
right?
on it, yes. And
Oh,
now
yeah.
now it's ready for the next
For me.
for the next amount of decades
Yes.
and to the next generation someday.
There's so much family, like this business is our family history.
Yes.
There's so much personal investment from our family that goes into how we treat the heirlooms from other people's family. And I think that that's one of the most important things that I learned when I started working here, not growing up in this business the way that Stephen has, what reverence he has for that responsibility. When you, like what you were saying, is how much you would almost rather have what's left of it than trust that someone else
Right.
is going to hold it and treasure it. And I would watch him take notes when he's holding somebody's heirloom of exactly what they wanted changed and what they wanted preserved.
Yeah.
And that he was telling me and telling our staff, like, you cannot replace any of what this is. So we want to restore it and make it usable, but you don't want to lose the history of what it says. So
I think that you're in a business here with us that my grandfather started. And my dad is retiring in 2 weeks. He's been here 60 years of his life, almost full time, probably like 58 years full time that he's working here. and he's coming in every single day and servicing people face to face. So that's the dynamic of this business. And so when a watch like that comes into the store, everybody here understands the severity of it, and it's not something that we ever just treat like, you know, something that has no value because maybe the watch is only a $50 or $100 Timex
Right.
that was bought in the 70s. That was somebody's mother's or father's watch that they gave them, and now they brought it here for us to bring it back to life. So I would treat that watch the same as I treated your watch, the same as we would treat
That's
any
so
watch.
nice. That's such a nice story.
But it's the
If
truth,
I was
though,
interviewing you,
which you
I
did.
would say, which I did.
Yes.
And I never said why I found you or how, but we'll
Right.
get to that. I would ask you, what is the oldest the oldest watch and the least expensive watch with the greatest story?
Oh, I have the best story.
Okay.
I have the best story. So I got a phone call from an elderly woman in, I think it was Iowa. And she said, "I'm so glad I found you, Central. I have a Central watch." And we've never made watches, but we've gotten a lot of inquiries over the years from people whose watches are branded Central. And what it was, at some point in history, there was either a store or a brand that basically just stamped their name on generic watches. They were never like a real watch company.
That happened a lot. A lot
Right.
of companies didn't
So-
make their own watches. Most didn't. They were just branded.
But when people started finding these things in estate sales and things, or just coming across them in their families, we'd get phone calls like, "What's this worth? What's the history of this?" And we got to tell them it's pretty much worthless. No, and it has nothing to do with us. So I went through the whole story and explained to her nicely that it wasn't really us. And she said, "Well, can you fix it?" And I said, "Sure." And she explained to me that she was living in a nursing home, and that she had been married to her husband for a very long time, and he had recently passed. And she had this watch, and she needed to give it to her daughter because she had one daughter who had cared for her and her husband up until he passed away, and she really wanted to give her a gift to thank her. And she was racking her brain, what can I give her, what can I give her? And she said her husband came to her in a dream and told her, "Remember the watch that I gave you? That's what you should give her." And she went on to tell me the story about how they were very young and they fell in love and they didn't have 2 cents to rub together, and they were sitting in a car and he handed her this box with the watch in it, and he was so shy that he couldn't look at her when he was giving it to her. But when she opened it, she knew how extravagant it was because they really had no money, and how much he loved her. And she said in that moment, it was the most loved she had ever felt, and that she needed to give her daughter that moment of love between her two parents, and so she needed the watch to work. So I'm crying, and I said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna fix it. You send it to me." Well, it came, and it looked like she had buried it in her backyard for 50 years. It was in pieces, and I handed it to him, and he said, "This has actual dirt in it." I said, "Yeah, but you gotta fix it."
She told me the story.
Right.
What would you say the value of it was?
Zero, less than zero. You'd
Nothing.
have to pay someone to take it away.
Okay.
It was absolutely worthless, but she had told me that story, and then she said,
And it becomes priceless.
right, and she
course.
said, "I feel like I've been guided to you because one of the aides in the nursing home took her to the library to use the internet to look up Central because there was no internet in her nursing home. And so she got to us, and I'm crying listening to the story. I said, "Oh yeah, he's gonna fix it." And I handed it to him. He said, and he's very, very, very honest and tells people always, "It will cost you $1,000 to fix something that I wouldn't give you a quarter for.
But if
But
it's sentimental,
If it's sentimental and you want it to work,
we can do
we
it.
can do it."
Amazing.
Yes.
Right, but he'll always tell everybody, like, this is not, if this is not for sentimental value, do not invest money in this. So he said, anything is possible, but you have to tell her like that this is a worthless item. I said, oh no, it is not a worthless item. She is going to want that fixed. And she did. And so he fixed it.
We fixed it.
He fixed it. It looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
It looks
Kind of
absolutely
like the transformation of your watch.
gorgeous.
Like I think we had to do the dial on it, cleaned it, polished the case. But that's the stuff we get all the time.
There's
so
so
telling
many great
stories. Tell me
stories.
the story on this one.
Okay,
This is the Audemars.
This is the Audemars. There's not a lot of story on this.
Okay.
Except that
It was an expensive watch.
it was an expensive watch.
That was
and-
as high end as you can get. It was Patek and Vacheron, and
Right.
Audemars was probably number 3 in those days.
And the other one that he has is probably equal to this, only it has more bells and whistles to it.
Right.
But he treated himself. When he got a promotion,
Sure.
he usually went out and treated himself to the one thing that he wanted. And if it wasn't a Porsche,
Uh-huh.
which he did once too.
Okay.
So this was just one of the ones. He came home and it wasn't working, and it wasn't, I mean, after so many years it stopped working because these are all winding watches. None of them are battery.
Right, right.
And he sent it, I guess, to Audemars Piguet, and they said, well, it's going to cost you probably half of what the watch was,
For sure.
which you did not charge me.
Right.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And it's gorgeous, and I'm
Yes.
going to wear that too.
Yes.
Maybe
So,
on the other arm.
in closing, once again, it was a real honor to have you here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I think our subscribers are going to double at least.
Oh.
Anybody that's going to want to hear this story, because it's infectious to just sit here with you, hear your life experience. So excited to have Laura here for the first time.
It was so great to meet you.
Yeah.
Same here.
And I knew once she came in, like, this would happen. And
Yeah.
it did. And even from the second you walked in the door, you guys were talking. I felt like I should just step back. So that's why I knew I couldn't do this one solo. And I'm going to bring my dad up to meet you.
I would love
that.
that.
would be very, very interesting.
That would be my
Because
pleasure.
I've talked you up a lot in the last
Yeah.
couple of weeks. Oh yeah.
Well,
I see my dad. I see my dad a lot. So
but I kind of know his story as well,
a little
and
bit.
I know your grandfather's story, which is and
Yes.
God willing, all of that you'll be able to read about in my book.
Yeah.